My name is Edwin Zapata, author of the Amazon best-selling book, Your Next Step, New Tools for Financial Abundance Now.
I'm Geraldine Carrier, the author of the upcoming book, Wild Woman, Master the Art of Pride, Presence, and Productivity.
A book can be more than just stories. It can engage your audience, create opportunities, generate leads, but only if you have the book work for you.
BCBtv presents Message to Millions, where we spotlight authors and get their message to millions.
Hey everybody, welcome to Message to Millions, Author Spotlight, where we spotlight authors and get their message to millions. My name is Edwin Zapata, author of the Amazon best-selling book, Your Next Step, New Tools for Financial Abundance Now, and I'm here with my co-host,
Geraldine Carrier, and I'm the author of Wild Woman, Master the Art of Pride, Presence, and Productivity. And again, we are here to share the rise to fame, the success story of another incredible author. Edwin, can you please tell us about him?
So I'm super excited because the author that we have with us today has been able to coach professional athletes, and in August of 2022, he has a goalie camp in London, Ontario. And for those of you interested, he is also part of the online certification program for coaches. So if you're looking to be a certified coach, you're going to definitely want to check him out. And if you would like a free downloadable copy of his book, you can go to, or email him, I should say, info@icoachgoalies.com for his book, Target Practice. And you're going to want to definitely take that for a slap shot. His name is none other, the one, the only, Mr. Chris Dyson.
Woohoo! Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much for that awesome welcome. I so appreciate it.
Welcome, Chris. It's good to have you here.
Not a lot
Let
of
Gerry jump in.
Oh,
I see the excitement in Gerry's face. I'll let her go right to it.
I'm just super excited because, not a lot of people know this, that, Chris had a handful of, influence on a lot of us with Black Card Books. And of course, that's not the focus here. But of course, I like to say, I am as great as I am because of people like Chris. So I really want to, dive into, what actually becoming an author. What was that journey like for you?
Wow, that's a pretty big can of worms you've opened up. Well, thank you. Thank you for that lovely comment as well about bringing everybody along. For the journey for me to become an author was pretty exciting. It was back in 2015. I decided I was going to write a book. I've been thinking about it for about probably 15, 20 years, like a lot of folks, and just didn't get around to it. And I was in a car accident prior to that, a year before that, and my path changed. And I decided that it was time to actually step away from doing as much physical work as I've been doing with the students I work with, and actually transition into more online. So I wanted to write the book to help promote that directional change for our company. And we started the company in 1988. So we've been doing this for an awful long time. And it's a pretty big change to make that, to make something change that much after you've been doing it for that long. So I decided to write the book, and finally got around to doing it, and met with Gerry, Robert, came to one of the events, much like many of the authors and most of the employees, and figured that was the company I wanted to work with. I know I looked at self-publishing, I looked at all the other options out there, and I figured I really wanted to work with Black Card Books because they allowed me to be in control, and they allowed me to basically do everything I wanted to do without giving away all of my rights, intellectual rights, and having somebody else get paid a lot of money for doing what I could do. But they gave me the resources to put it all together. So that was the start of my journey, was my decision, first of all. And I think for a lot of authors, that's what it becomes. It's the decision to do it. And a lot of people say they've made the decision, but don't. So you really haven't made the decision. For me, it was really imperative that I make that decision and step into it, because I needed to change because of the car accident, to change the way my physically was able to do things. And when I got down to it, it took me about 3 months to write the book. Now, everybody kind of goes, wow, that was really quick. It was pretty quick, but I wrote about 36,000 words at that point. And then Gerry laughed at me and told me to cut it back to about 17,000. And it took me another 8 months to cut it back. It was a lot harder to go backwards and take stuff out, because it's kind of like your baby. And when I finally got it down after those 8 months, it took a very short time to get the book published and out in 2016, I think it was. So that, it was a fairly simple process for me, because I made the decision. It was like a giant jigsaw puzzle with all the parts sitting on my desk, and I just kind of put them all together. I worked most nights for me, I'm a night owl. I usually work between 11 and 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when I got my work done. And I committed to doing that for the 3 months. And I put it all together and I sent it into the team, and I had an editor go through it. And suddenly I was a published author. And, this thing showed up at the door within about a year and a half of that original meeting with Gerry. And I was quite proud of that. And it went on to become a #1 bestseller in 5 categories. 5 categories is a pretty impressive number. And we were quite excited about that and proud of that. And we've been able to change the lives of a number of students that I've worked with, kids out there that are, in sports in general. I'm specifically a hockey guy, but it was really unique to be able to have that book cross over into different genres and be able to affect coaches and kids in other sports as well, because I deal with the psychology of working with children and helping coaches better understand how to connect with kids as well. So, that's where it started, and that's where it has come from that point. And here we are, 2022, a lot of years later, and the book has made me. I think it made about $250,000 to $300,000 profit for me in the next 4 years after it first came out. So it did quite well with it. It's a nice little side hustle for me, and it's become a full-time business at times as well. So it's allowed me to have a lot of freedom and enjoy life in a different way than I was able to before. I know that was a long answer. I hope that was okay.
No, of course. If anything, that was more insightful because I never saw it from that perspective. And I wanted to ask you, from your experience taking things in the book, because those listening to this on Apple and Spotify, you're not going to be able to see this. You're going to have to watch this on YouTube. But I'm actually holding a copy of his book. And in his book, he actually has so many different topics on hockey and different aspects of it. And I wanted to ask Chris, how are you able to translate that for the people that you coach in person? And I mean this in the way of, like, I'm a hands-on kind of person, right? So I could read a textbook and I'll probably take in 10% of what I read. But if you show me something hands-on, like I can really see it and observe it, and I can take in the technique and the style, and I learn better in person and hands-on. So how were you able to take the stuff from the book and translate it to the people that you coach in person? Because I know you've coached professionals, which I know you're not allowed to say, but you've coached all types of people, all walks of life. And how has it been, taking those lessons that you stress in the book and showing people in real life that that they can become athletes?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I've worked with, as you said, I've worked with pro athletes. I've coached in Germany, Finland, States, Canada, over 5,000 goalies I've worked with over my career. And I, grassroots all the way up to professional goaltenders. And I really made a decision about 10 years ago that I really wanted to focus on the grassroots kids. Kids in general, be it house league hockey or whatever, but kids between 8 to about 14 is kind of where I really enjoyed working with them the most. And as you said, most of you yourself are hands-on. Me too. I can read a textbook. I can watch a drill on the ice. You see coaches, sometimes they're drawing pictures on boards and kids are all standing there and they send the first kid out there and he's completely lost. That's me. I don't understand if you draw it on a board. I need to watch somebody do it. I need to participate. And having coached since 1988 and run our goalie programs throughout the world, I was able to garner what actually it is that kids need and how they understand and how they learn. And when I wrote the book, the first half of the book is specifically written for coaches to help them understand how to communicate with kids in general and how to make that connection and how to make them understand what it is they're actually wanting to do and how to connect with them. And, you see a lot of coaches out there, they're I call them screamers. They're behind the bench yelling at kids, whatever sport it might be. They yell at kids and they think that's motivating them. It's exactly the opposite, actually. So I was able to take all of those lessons I'd learned, having watched coaches, worked with coaches in all the different levels, and having good conversations with professional hockey players. I was fortunate enough to get to hang out with Wayne Gretzky at one point, went for breakfast with him a number of years ago. And he said, when the game is no longer fun, I'm going to retire. And 2 years later, he actually retired. And I was fortunate enough to actually go to his inauguration into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And he said at that point, the game wasn't fun anymore. So I decided to stop playing. So it doesn't apply just to kids. It applies to professional athletes. Everybody plays for the same reasons. They want to enjoy what they're doing. And it's a game. So I took all of those lessons I'd learned from professional hockey players and all the kids I'd worked with and the coaches. And how did I put that into the book? Well, it was actually really easy because as I said, I broke the book into 2 parts. First part is specifically for the coaches to help them understand how to connect with the kids and how to actually get them motivated. And the second part is more for the specific technicalities of the game, and specifically the position of goaltending, which is what I coach. So it wasn't that hard a thing to do. I guess, having 20 years experience, 25 years at that point experience in the game, it was a natural transition for me to be able to put that into paper and online for a certification course as well. And if I just talk about that for half a second, the online certification course is where the company was headed when I wrote the book, because I see there are so many coaches out there who do not understand how to connect with kids, how to motivate them, and how to reach them actually in general is basically the problem. They don't understand how to reach kids. They think if they stand there and scream or yell and tell them to do something, they're going to do it. That's not the truth. So I was able to take all of that knowledge I'd accumulated over the years, put it into the online certification program. And it just comes from all the experience I've had over the years. And I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of really good people and have the experience of working with a lot of pros and having the opportunity to talk to them and get their knowledge as well. So it's not just me. I learn. I never stop learning. And that's something I firmly believe. You never stop learning. And when you do stop learning, you should probably stop teaching.
I love that. There's so many things. Again, I get so excited on these because I'm taking notes as you're talking. I'm like, oh, I want to, those different questions that I have for you. There was one thing that you said earlier, which was talking about, decision making, right? So again, we can go into the other areas. I'm going to say that for later. But when it comes to decision making, what would you advise somebody, like how important having that skill is?
Oh, decision making in life in general is absolutely what will change your life. I firmly believe that. And as I said earlier, so many people make the decision to become an author, but they don't really decide. So many people decide they're going to commit to playing a sport, but they really don't commit. They don't work hard in practice. And as a coach, you need to be able to spot that and help somebody work through the decision-making process and understand that if you make a commitment and a decision, or the commitment is the decision, but if you make that decision and you commit, you need to understand what it is that will take you to the next level. Making the decision and putting it out there means nothing if you're not willing to do what it takes to get there. And, I've worked with, as I said, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of junior A hockey players and pro hockey players. And probably 25 years ago, we had a junior A hockey player who'd been drafted into the NHL come out to one of our camps. And I asked him to come and speak because I knew he was a very serious gentleman. He was 18, 19 years old at the time, maybe 20. And he must have been 20 because he was going to the NHL the next year. He'd been drafted. And we had him come to the camp and tell the kids what it took for him to make the decision to make the NHL and what he had to do to make that happen. And it's always stuck with me because he was a fantastic speaker at 20 years old. He was a kid. But he was able to tell the kids, what I gave up at 20 years old and through my high school years was I didn't go to parties. I didn't hang out with my friends and drink. I didn't have a girlfriend for most of the time. When I did, it was off and on because I had to commit to practices. And all of the things that he'd sacrificed to do that was pretty impressive. And the kids just stood there with their mouths open going, oh my God, you have to do that to be a pro hockey player? I thought you just had to be good. And it really sunk in with some of those players. I know a couple of players in the camp at that point in time actually went on to play junior hockey and had good careers in maybe in Europe and that sort of thing. And a few of them got drafted. But it really, really sunk into the kids what it takes to be good at something. It's a decision to commit. And if you don't have that and you don't understand what that is, I think that's a real role of a coach in any level, any sport, is getting your players to buy in and understand what the decision is and how you need to commit to it and what you have to do to make what you have committed to happen.
I love that example, Chris, because that transitions into something I wanted to ask you, because we were actually talking about something before we started this podcast, and a lot of people don't realize that mindset translate into pretty much anything, even business, no matter what it is that you want to do. And a lot of people see athletes, actors, actresses, singers, billionaires, whatever the case is, they see them and they think to themselves, I would love to have that. I would love to be that. I wish I could be you. And the reality is, as much as they think that, they actually wouldn't, because of exactly what you just mentioned, because of the sacrifices. You'd be saying no to pretty much almost everything if you're committed, if you've now given up everything for that one desire. And a lot of people actually can't handle saying no and watching their friends, family, peers pretty much shun them because they've put the focus on themselves. And hey, that's a sacrifice that we all got to make at times.
Well said. Absolutely, very well said.
So I wanted to transition into asking you this question because from that mindset, Chris, you mentioned earlier how you've noticed that people that get into sports end up doing better in business. You mentioned something like that. And I wanted to ask the question of how else have you seen that type of coaching? Because I agree with you 100%. And I've noticed it myself. How have you noticed that type of coaching come into the business world in terms of when you interact with people that have had some type of sports in their life and those that haven't?
That's a great question. A number of years ago, I applied for a job and I got hired simply because the woman who did the interview said, "You're a hockey guy. You understand teamwork. You understand mindset." And that, again, that's something that stuck with me. And as I said a few minutes ago, you're always learning. And I always try to take something from everybody I meet. And that really has stuck with me over the years. And, decision-making and mindset are something that you need to take with you through everything. And sports sets you up for success in the real world. And that is something that a coach needs to understand. And so many coaches are about wins, losses, and a lot of times their own ego. And that is a huge mistake because what you coach and how you coach will change that player's life forever. There's an interesting story. A friend of mine told me, he was a junior A coach here in Canada. And he said they had a player come out to camp one year. He was an okay player. And he showed up with a garbage bag, his equipment in a garbage bag. He did everything he could possibly do to get to the rink. Had no money, but he made it to the rink and he showed up. And at the second practice, the coach started yelling at him. He was one of these players that he figured he could pick on. And this was one of the old school days when the coaches yelled a lot. And he thought that's how you coached. And by the end of the week, he said to the player, "Pack your equipment up in that garbage bag you brought because you're garbage." And there was a few other expletives there I can't say. "And get out." My friend ran into that same player 20 years later. And he had become an alcoholic. He had never gotten a good job. His life had fallen apart after that point. And they sat down, they had a coffee together. And he said, "What happened after that day?" He said, "This is what happened. And I attribute everything in my life that happened to that conversation." Coaches do not understand what a difference they can make in someone's life by treating them properly with respect. You can still be a hard ass as a coach. Absolutely. You have to be at times. But you also have to have empathy, and you have to understand the player you're working with, and you have to understand what motivates and what affects that person. Some players, the hard ass technique is what they need. Some need a pat on the back. Some need a combination of both. So it really makes a difference in somebody's life to be able to do that. And in business, it's exactly the same, going back to your question. I was fortunate enough, I started 1988 as a hockey coach, a goalie coach, built my business in that world. Back then, I really didn't have a career path figured out. But hockey allowed me to be able to become certified in life coaching. I decided I wanted to go down the path of life coaching. So I got certified in that. That led me to being able to coach entrepreneurs. That led me to being able to coach authors. I've coached well over 1,000 entrepreneurs in my life simply because I was a good hockey coach and I took the same theory and the same values and transferred them the way I coach people in business. And I've been successful on both sides of the coin. So, it makes a big difference how you treat people and your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, beautiful. There was a story that I actually, and this kind of goes into my next question, is about how to motivate people, right? And that is a really important piece, is, having that emotional intelligence and that compassion and that empathy. That piece is really huge. But the one thing that I wanted to ask, and this is a question I always like to ask, and I'm really interested to see what your perspective of it is going to be. When it comes to, those crucial conversations and, having that desire, that will, that drive, right? So I always give the example, you can teach a monkey how to ride a bike, type, document up, whatever, but you can't teach it drive. So how does one person build drive? Where does it get built in the first place? What things need, what's the formula to create drive in an individual? And if we were to, again, package it and put it in little cups we could drink every single day, what would that look like for you? What's your idea on that?
Drive is a funny thing. It's certainly finicky. There are times when you cannot motivate someone to do something that they really don't believe they can do or really have the desire to do. Absolutely. But you can certainly build desire and build drive in someone by finding out what it is that motivates them. And that's one of the things. I don't care if it's a 7-year-old kid I'm working with or, somebody who's just gotten drafted into pro sports. I ask the same questions. Why do you do this? What is it you're hoping to get out of this? And I need to figure that out for myself so I know how to motivate them. And I use their words against them sometimes when they're not working hard. You told me you want to do this because, and you're not giving me an effort. So how do you think you're going to achieve that? And you go open-ended questions and you give them the opportunity to see from my eyes what I see. Because a lot of times, you're in the middle of things. You're not really involved in what you're doing. You don't actually figure out what it is you're doing at that point. You don't see that you're not giving 100%. And we run one of our goalie camps that we run is called the High Intensity Camp. It started 25 years ago. A friend of mine was a sergeant in the Finnish army, and he is a professional coach in Finland. He coaches pro hockey over there. And he brought a little different mentality to our program at that point because he's a sergeant in the Finnish military and they do things pretty tough. So we had to tone him down a little bit. But as he joined our program, one of the things he taught me was be honest with people. Don't fluff it up. Don't make them feel good about themselves because that's what they want to hear. You need to be honest with people and say, you're not giving me an effort. Why not? Ask questions, pull it out of them, help them understand. And he took that program, and we created that program together initially, the high intensity program, as almost a military boot camp. You hear about boot camp where they try to break you. We're not trying to break people, but we're pushing them to their break point, pushing them outside of their comfort zone with that program. And it's designed for university, college goalies and people, high-level goaltenders who are hoping to get drafted and move on with their careers. And it's designed to push them past the break point, because once you push out your comfort zone, it stays there. And if you push it further, it stays there. Very rarely do you see someone fall back. And during that program, we had students who came to the camp, and I'm talking 18-year-old college goalies who maybe were looking at being drafted the next year, who wound up in the corner crying in the middle of this course. That's how hard we push these students. And as we developed that program, it wasn't about screaming and yelling. It was about encouraging. Like when that player was in the corner crying, and it happened quite regularly, we'd have somebody throw up in the middle of a drill, like, keep going. And as we saw this unfold and we started to work with the students and we saw more and more of this happen, we understood the importance of the encouragement, and we understood the importance of reminding them why they were there. And the funny thing that happened is after this course, it was 6 hours of ice on the 6 hours on the ice every day for 5 days. And by the end of the camp, everybody had multiple blisters on their feet and they were, just whipped. And people said, I'm never coming back to this camp. You guys are nuts. Oddly enough, within a week of that camp, we started getting emails. And this happened every year since. We'd get emails saying, now I get it. I understand. I'll be back next year. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. We have students come to that camp 6, 8 years, their entire career in minor hockey. They will come to that camp every single year to get ready for the next upcoming season for tryouts, because they know what they're going to get. They know we're going to push them past their breaking point. We know what we're doing and we know why we're doing it. And so do they. And they appreciate the fact they've been able to come out of that camp. They've survived it. And they're that much better. And the funny thing is when we hear from students who say, I get to overtime now in game 7, people are tired, they're whipped, they can't go any harder. I'm like, yep, bring it on. I'm happy. I'm ready to go because it doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't fizz on me. And so it's just that, how to connect with people and how to push them. So, I love that course. I love working with students that are at that level, that understand it and they get it. And I love getting those letters afterwards from people going, ha, now I get it. You guys are awesome. I hated you last week, but I love you guys now.
Honestly, Chris, I love seeing the correlation between entrepreneurship and and coaching in sports. And I'm going to bring it up again because I just want to emphasize to the people listening how valuable, how undervalued getting into sports really is. As an example, the words of encouragement and pushing people beyond limits, honesty is super, super important. When I wanted to get into shape, I was in like the darkest point in my life personally. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go do something different. I'm going to go get into shape, right? So I've never been good at sports because no one really pushed me, but, or whatever the excuses are, who cares? Doesn't matter now. But anyway.
Doesn't have to be sports. Doesn't have to be sports, man. It could be anything.
So exactly. And with that being said, I went to the gym and I remember I sat down with the sales rep and I said, look, I want a personal trainer. And I looked at him dead in the face and I said, look, no offense, but I don't want someone that looks like you. I want someone that's like the Hulk, right? Like these are the results that I want and this is what I'm after. No offense to you, but this is what I'd like. He's like, I got just the guy for you. And he brought me this guy. Shout out to Sam, by the way, awesome guy. And he's big. He's like top 10 in Canada. He's like won championships. This guy's the real deal, right? And when I was training with him, I said to him, I stopped him and I said, look, I just want to be clear with you. Don't give me that good job, buddy, keep going sort of thing. I'm the tough love kind of guy. And, I can't really say it on here, but, say things like keep going and, be rude to me because I don't want to stop less than failure. And if I feel like I can still walk by the end of the session, you're fired, I said to him, right? We're like best of friends to this day. That was like 2017. What are we now? 2022. So it's like I've known him for like 5 years. We're awesome friends. And that type of coaching, but he was encouraging. I want to get it out there that he was encouraging, right? Like if I really pushed it to beyond my limit to failure, he's like, hey man, you really broke barriers, or like you really killed that. That's a different type of like pat on the back, like petting a dog, like good job, buddy. That doesn't work for me. But that type of encouragement, I think it relates to that style that you're talking about because you are breaking mental boundaries. You're pushing people beyond their limits, but still keeping that encouragement like, hey, you are doing a good job, but like let's push you a little bit further. And then that's why they can go to those extra games, overtime and all that stuff, because now you've broken their paradigms. So I just wanted to throw that back to you because I think it's really great and undervalued. And I love that you are focusing on that.
It sounds like Sam's a guy I'd like to meet. If I can interject one more thing here, just to make sure everybody understands that's listening to this. I said earlier, I can be a hard ass when I coach. I'm exactly the same when I coach entrepreneurs, when I coach authors, whatever, exactly the same way. And there are some folks who don't resonate with that. Absolutely. And as a coach, you have to recognize that. And you have to be able to admit that as well. Because there's been many situations where I'll be working with somebody and maybe it's an entrepreneur, maybe it's a student, and I'll look at the parent or I'll look at the student and I'll say, you know what, we're not a good match. And you have to be able to face that. And I love working with, a lot of times I'll work with a woman and sometimes I'll hand off to the woman because there's a better resonation there between the client and the woman than a man. So maybe it just works better that way. And you have to be able to see that, be it in business or be it in life or be it in coaching. You have to be able to see those and not go, it's not me. I don't take it personally. You just resonate better with that person. So I'm going to suggest you go over there and have that conversation. So as a coach, that's something you really have to do. And that's something you have to do in business as well. You have to be able to, admit that you're not going to resonate with everyone and your style is not going to match with everybody. And sometimes you're going to piss people off. That's life. And if you do, own up to it, just recognize it.
And Chris, I know that being a coach, whether it's in sports or business, it's not easy and it's honestly not for everybody. But for those that are listening to you right now and that are considering being a life coach, a business coach, or let's focus on the sports coach of some type, and they're listening and they hear you, they see your success, they know that you know what we're talking about, and they're wondering, hey, I know that Chris has that online certification program for coaches and they're on the fence, maybe yes, maybe no. And maybe they're scared of taking that leap and maybe starting something new. What would you say to those people that are on the fence thinking about it and they're not too sure if they should pursue it?
Well, first thing I'll say is do your research and make sure you know what you're doing, because a lot of times we get in love with our own ideas and nobody else likes them. So you have to make sure it's a valid idea, first of all. Once you've done your research and you've done that, my advice is to step out of your comfort zone. And that's the hardest thing, is to make that decision that I am going to do it. I'm an introvert. When I was in high school, I was the guy who was sick in air quotes, for 3 weeks when we had to do a speech. I couldn't do a speech. I refused to do it. I didn't go to school for 3 weeks. Oddly enough, I became a public speaker and wound up doing radio shows and things. So it's kind of odd how that works. But the reason it was because I made the decision. And that's all it really is to make that decision to move forward. And if you have an idea and you believe in it strongly enough, you'll find a way to make it happen. I mean, I am not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not the most educated guy in the world. I'm no genius, but I've been able to accomplish some pretty amazing things in my life because I made a decision to do them and to move forward. And anybody can do that. I mean, you look at the list of multimillionaires in the world, a good number of those folks don't have crazy education in what they've actually become successful in. And the reason is because they made a decision. So if you've got an idea, first of all, you got to believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, the old adage of, make it till you fake it till you make it, is actually somewhat true. But it's that decision to move forward and to believe in yourself. You have to decide to believe in yourself. And so many people say they make the decision, but they won't take the next step. And why won't they take the next step? Because they really don't believe in themselves. So you need somebody to maybe coach you along, maybe mentor you at that point, maybe help you believe in yourself. I'm a big, firm believer in coaches. I wonder what that is. I think I know why. So whatever it is you decide to do, you get a mentor, get a coach, somebody that'll help you believe in yourself if you're waffling on something. And, do your research, as I said. But if you believe in your idea and you think you can do it, absolutely. You can do anything you want to do pretty much, but you have to decide. It's all about mindset.
I love it. There's so many different things when it comes to, the things that you talk about and what we're talking about here. It's just so good. Again, because of, I also was in hockey. I did hockey, basketball, soccer, and honestly, like, I have medals. Like, I'm proud of my medals. But the thing is, and it's funny because, like, everything you're saying, right, it correlates with my business, with, the business of making music now and being an artist, a touring artist, right? And there was a producer that I was working with recently, and he goes, well, what do you want to do, right? And I said, well, I want to be a star, right? And he said, okay, what does that mean to you, right? And because he said, everybody talks about the it factor. You have to have it, right? People are born with it. But he said that's not true at all, right? You can learn how to have the it factor. So I'm interested, because this kind of goes in two different ways, right? Which is the process, right? So I think that most entrepreneurs, business people, all of us, we fall in love with that process of becoming, right? So can you tell us, like, what specific tips, tools, or strategies could you pass along to people who are, going through that process of maybe they don't really believe in themselves, they don't understand what it is, that they have a vision, right? So what would you say to them to break through and get through that process a little bit faster?
Great question. I think the process for me of helping someone move forward, be it in sports or business, is, first of all, understand what it is you want. And you said that producer said to you, what it is you want. Visualize it. Understand what it is. I'm a big believer in lists. If you saw my desk in front of me right now, there's papers everywhere. I have lists of everything. But, those lists of what it is I want, what do I want to achieve? What am I going to have when I get to that goal? First of all, if you can put that on paper and look at it, you can see, everybody's going to write, oh, I want to make $1 million and I want to be a rock star. Great. But break that down into smaller bite-sized chunks and understand the steps to get there. Working through the whole process is such an important thing. If you put together a business plan, it's stages, it's steps. It's no different with your life. You have to make a decision of what you're going to do, and then you have to figure out, reverse engineer it and figure out, what do I have to do at the bottom to get to the top? And putting that all down and visualizing it and understanding the steps, and then taking those steps and visualizing and understanding all of the processes within the steps. We're talking a lot of components to do that, but people who are successful understand that, and they constantly ask themselves and remind themselves, where am I going? Why am I going there? And what do I have to do next to get there? Commit to doing something every day or every hour or whatever it is that will help you achieve your goal. And showing up once a week and spending 15 minutes on your goal is a load of crap. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's got to be something you commit to. I commit to doing something on my list every day. Every single day. I've got a list thing it's in the background on my computer right behind me. And even as I'm talking to you, I see that list out of the corner of my eye. I know Gerry talks about the list in your pocket. I've still got, actually, over here, I've still got my heart's desire list sitting beside me. A bunch of blank sheets that I keep here on the desk beside me, and I fill those out, and I make sure I track what it is I'm doing. So I think for anybody who has a vision and a goal, you need to commit to the steps, the process, and the belief and the mindset of getting there and understanding what it is you're trying to achieve by visualizing. But don't just keep your eye up here. You got to look at everything between and fill in those dots and make sure you understand what you have to do for each stage of that process. Getting the $1 million and being the rock star is nice, but that's what's going to happen after you do all the little things in between. You know that.
So Chris,
Yes.
on the note of making lists and making things basically be focused, right? Go through the process. For those that are considering becoming sports coaches, what kind of advice would you give for them that would like to be sports coaches? Or let me ask it this way: for those that would like to attend your certification program, what can they expect? Of course, I'm sure they can expect nothing but professionalism from you. But what can they expect to make that transition into sports coaching?
They can expect honesty, first of all. Not everybody's cut out for this, for sure. But you have to make sure that you come in with a realistic expectation of where it is you want to get to, what it is you want to achieve. But you also have to be open and willing to accept your own faults and have somebody point them out. Anytime I'm working with, whether it's a coach moving forward or a student, I'm very honest with them. I don't care if you're 7 years old, I will tell a student exactly what I see. You are not very good at this. We need to fix this. And I don't get any pushback when I deal with that in the appropriate manner, because if you're dealing with a little kid, you're probably saying it in a little bit of a joking manner, but you're serious. When you're dealing with an adult, you're saying it in a different way. But you have to be willing and able to accept that you're going to come in with some deficiencies, and you're going to have somebody point those out and work on them. If you come in with the mindset that everything's great and I'm wonderful, we have a problem from the start. So if you're going to be a sports coach specifically, you have to come in with the mindset that you're there to help people, help your players, help your students, whatever it is, get better, and you're there for them. You're there to serve them. You may be the hard ass, you may be the person who, sometimes you get upset because things aren't going right. Sometimes you might yell, but at the end of the day, you're there to make them better for themselves. You're not there to make them better so you look good. And so many people in sports, minor sports and specifically, because they're mostly volunteers, God bless them for coming out and volunteering their time, but a lot of them should stay home because they're out there for their own ego, and they're out there to say, I coach AAA and my team has X number of wins. No, I never say that. I don't care what level I coach. I don't care what level my own kids, I don't care what level they play or whatever kid I coach. It's about making them better at what they're doing so they enjoy it more and stay in the game longer. And that is the exact philosophy I follow right there. My job as a coach is to make you better so you enjoy the game more, so you'll stay in it longer and you'll have more fun. That's my objective. And that's what every coach's objective should be. I don't care if you're coaching AAA at the midget level, which is the next step to getting drafted. At that point, your goal is to help that player get drafted, but you're still hoping they have fun, get better, enjoy the game more, and stay in it longer. So it doesn't matter. That's your goal as a coach in minor sports, of any kind of sports. And that's why I'm able to coach any sport, really, or any coach in any sport, because that's my philosophy and everything. And I've coached roller hockey. I'm not a roller hockey guy. I don't understand. I've coached baseball. I'm not a baseball guy. I've coached various different activities because I have the same mindset. Game's easy to learn. Coaching people is not that easy to learn. That's the key to being successful. I've never considered myself to be a fantastic tactical coach in sports, but I've won championships and coached players to move up on a regular basis. And I'm talking players, not goaltenders, which is my specialty. And I was reluctant to take a head coaching job with a team because I don't know enough about running drills and stuff. And I figured out very quickly, it's not about running drills. It's about connecting with those players and being there for the right reasons and being able to communicate with them to help them understand what they need to do and what their actual goal is. So any coach should be able to figure that out.
Brilliant. Brilliant. It's be better than me. I love it. Amazing. Okay, great. So do you have anything to give away to our listeners?
I certainly have a downloadable copy of my book to give away. I'd love to offer anybody a copy of that. You can just send me an email at info@icoachgoalies.com. I'll be happy to give away a free downloadable copy of my book. And if somebody wants to email me about my coaching certification course, I might even be able to fix somebody up and help you be able to get involved in that as well. So don't be shy about emailing me for any help you need in coaching whatsoever. I do have a consulting service, but anybody seeing this podcast, you're more than welcome to email me directly at info@icoachgoalies.com. And I'll give you a free coaching session over Zoom. We'll have a conversation. If you're stuck, you're having a problem with whatever sport you're coaching or whatever it is you're doing business-wise even.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation. And I know I have a bunch of notes, and I'm sure all of our people are excited as well and all amped up and ready to take over the world. So thank you so much for being on our podcast today. Of course, the podcast was brought to you by none other than Blackheart Books. And of course, we have a freebie to give to you. So if you want to go to bit.ly/BCB books, we have a book to give away to you, which is called The Millionaire Mindset, and none other than Mr. Gerry Robert himself. And we'll see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.
BCBtv. Believe, create, become.